In motion is Sewell. Goff to throw. Wants to throw it to Sewell. He caught it! Boy, Sewell with a first down! Oh, yes! The big man dives down to the 31-yard line. Oh, that is beautiful!
Welcome to the Twentyman the Huddle podcast presented by Microsoft. I am Tim Twentyman. He is PJ Clark. And Peach, it's the postseason edition of the Twentyman the Huddle podcast, unfortunately.
Sadly.
Yeah, it is sadly. Look, give Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, all these players credit. I mean, this could have went real south at 1-6, but look, they stayed the course. They were confident in themselves and their process and what they were doing, and they knew at 1-6 they weren't that bad of a football team. And look, they go 8-2 to finish the year, 9-8, a winning record. Now tons of momentum heading into the offseason. The consolation prize, you got to knock Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers.
That was a good consolation prize.
And look, some great things from that game. Obviously, Jamal Williams, getting the 1,000 yards and breaking Barry Sanders' record. Jared Goff continuing to play good football. That defense, I thought, played well all game long.
Kirby Joseph, I feel like that's a big takeaway.
He's got 3 picks of Aaron Rodgers.
That's pretty cool. At the very least, you can say whatever you want about it, but pretty cool. I
thought I saw something on Twitter or something go across that, like Urlacher in all his years in Chicago had 3 picks.
Had 3 total picks.
Yeah, and Kirby Joseph had them in like 1 year.
In 10 games. Yep.
Yeah, and a lot of good performances. Aidan played well. It was just a lot of guys. It was a really good way to finish that game and to knock the Packers out. Obviously, you would have hoped that the Rams could have handled business there. It went to overtime. It was close. They had their chances. But really, when I think about this, and I know people were complaining about the refereeing in the Seattle-LA game, but Detroit had their chances.
Yeah,
to handle the business themselves. You win that game in Minnesota. You take care of business late there. Obviously Seattle, you score 45 points and lose the game. You could have handled it right there, and then you didn't show up at Carolina. So I think they have only themselves to blame for not making the playoffs. But credit to them for turning their situation around and putting themselves in a spot where it went to the last day of the season to have a chance to go in. When you're 1-6, nobody thought that was going to be the case.
It's hard to go 1-6 and make the playoffs. And the fact that was even a consideration and it got until 7:30 before the 8:20 kickoff of the last game. I mean, you can't ask for anything more than that. Obviously, we would love to be previewing a matchup with the 49ers this week, but it is what it is, and the fact that was even a small chance of happening from 1-6 is just a testament to everybody in this building and the work that they put in.
100%. And so, you're not preparing for San Francisco. You're talking about the end of the season and the offseason and the draft and everything that gets going. And every year, look, Dan Campbell has his final press conference, and then Brad Holmes has his. And both those happen this week. Look, what we're going to do is we're going to take 3 points from Dan, 3 points from Brad, kind of discuss them, hear from them, and talk about them a little bit, and that's how we'll kind of finish this up. Let's start with Dan. And, one of the questions that he was asked is what are you proud of? What are you most proud of what you guys were able to accomplish this season? And this is what Dan had to say.
I guess if anything, it just proves we're on the right track one more time. I just know that the coaches that I have here, the players that we've drafted, the players that we've kept that were here before us, the free agents we've signed, it was the right decision, man. These are the right guys for us, particularly in 2022. Now there's going to be decisions that have to be made moving forward, but they fit us, man. They fit the mold, and to us, you have to meet a certain type of criteria to be here. We don't just strictly look at talent, and our guys have created that culture. They've embraced it, and it's part of who we are, and it's why we'll always compete.
And look, Peach, I agree with them. I think the one thing that you love about this season, and I think you take from that 8-2 finish, is that they are on track. I think they have now very much built a culture, a foundation, built on toughness, built on grit, which he loves.
Yep.
you don't come back from 1-6 unless you're a tough, gritty football team, and then you believe in your head coach, and your head coach can get you out of some tough situations, which he's proven he's able to do. And so, I agree that the biggest takeaway from this season for me is that, boy, the future does look bright, doesn't it?
And I think he talks so much in that quote about having the right guys and the guys that they needed to battle back, and the guys that they thought, instilled what they're trying to build here. And I think as you look at, the list of free agents is not as long as it was last year, but as you look at those Kaminsky's and guys, Bugs, like guys like that, I think you're going to see a lot of those guys, at least they're going to make an effort to bring them back, because those are the culture guys that they want to build around and think got them to the point where you're competing for a playoff spot in the last week of the season.
100%. All right, let's shift the focus a little bit on potentially a guy the Lions could lose. Look, Ben Johnson is got
very real.
Yeah, very, very real. He's got 3 interviews so far that we know about. Look, interviews. Aaron Glenn took interviews last year. Like, this is what happens when you're successful. When you're top 5 offense, your offensive coordinator is going to get some.
You're going to get phone calls.
He's going to get phone calls. And this kind of, what are we talking about? The potential Campbell coaching tree here now, spreading roots.
It's on the table.
Getting wings. It's on the table. But here's what Dan had to say about Ben and the interview process upcoming for him.
I think a ton of Ben. I think he's. I've said it before. I just think he's extremely bright. He's creative. He's organized. He's a great communicator. I mean, he's got it. And I would do anything I can to help him. That's the bottom line. Of course, I don't want to lose him, but I'm not going to hold him back either. I would help him any way I can help him.
All right, Peach. What do you think? Is Ben Johnson the head coach of the blank in a month or so, or do you think he's back?
I mean, I hope he's back, because it would be.
I think we both hope he's back.
It would be a lot of fun to see what year 2 and a full JMO and a full complement of weapons.
Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be fun. Get that little flea flicker going, a JMO up the sideline. Let's see what happens. Why not? Not that Swift did it poorly, but that would be kind of fun. I don't know. I think he's got a really good shot. I think he's
going to impress people.
To the Lions' benefit, there are a lot of other offensive coaches available.
Yes.
Like there's Frank Reich, who obviously has a lot of experience. The offensive coordinator for the Eagles.
Yep.
I mean, there are other guys getting these calls, so I think, he's going to be an option for all of these teams. And would not surprise me if he got a second interview with a Houston, and you're looking at, a new quarterback in that situation, potentially with the number 2 pick, and he can mold C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young, whoever they end up with, into whatever he wants them to be. And Houston's got a lot of offensive talent. We saw what Carolina can do. Indianapolis, we saw in joint practices, they got weapons. So any of those teams that he's even just interviewing with now, he hasn't gotten a call from Arizona yet, or any of these other teams, at least as of when we're recording it. But these teams all have offensive weapons that Ben Johnson could do a lot with.
He could do a lot with, but Ben strikes me as a very calculated guy too. Obviously, he's very smart.
He's not going to take
a
job that he doesn't really want.
100%, especially because he knows the situation he's in here. He loves Dan Campbell.
Yeah.
Loves the freedom Dan Campbell gives him to just be him. Obviously, he knows what he's got here with one of the top 2 offensive lines that are all under contract, both running backs, the quarterback. You mentioned J-Mo. You've got one of the biggest upcoming stars in the game, in Amon-Ra St. Brown. But look, the reality is there's only 32.
There's only 32 of those jobs.
And there's a lot of money involved here too, and that's just the business side of the NFL. But I think Ben has the confidence in himself and his own abilities that he won't take a bad situation just to become a head coach, get the money, because I think he's confident in himself that this is going to come around next year too.
That's the thing.
The year after too. The year after too. He strikes me as that confident of a man, and so I think it's really got to be the right situation for him to bold. I don't think he's just going to take anything just to take it.
No, and that's a gamble. I mean, because these coaching carousels, once your name gets called one time and it might not come up again, and if you don't jump on the opportunity while you have it, you might fall off the carousel next year, and that is a gamble that he might have to make. But I mean, you look at these jobs and you compare at least the offensive weapons that he would be controlling here in Detroit versus some of these other teams. He knows what he's got here. It's not a mystery.
He's
box.
in a great situation.
Yeah.
No
losing.
There's no losing for him for sure. All right, let's flip one more. Let's with Dan before we get to Brad. This rookie class, and we've talked about it, and the sacks. When you look at the defensive guys, we saw a little bit of JMO get rolling there, but the future is really, really bright with these rookies, and Dan Campbell said as much here.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately any of your draft picks, you just want to see them develop. You want to see them get a little bit better every week. You want to see that a mistake that they made early, they don't make again. And really, they've all done that, and that includes Aidan. And I go back to this. I mean, he didn't just walk in the door and all of a sudden these great things happen. I mean, when it goes into Washington, he has 3 sacks, and then it's expected that he'll have 3 sacks every week from then on, and that's just not the reality. But the fact is, he was disruptive, and he's a football player, and he did improve. He did get better, and they all did. And when you're a young group, your rookies can develop like that, like Kirby and Rodriguez and Pascal. Once we got him going, he improved. Hutch, and then on top of that, you had Mack from last year. St. Brown was better. Sewell was better, and now that's becoming the nucleus of your team. And so the sky's limit. Barnes got better. I mean, all these young guys we've got are just continuing to they all took a step up. And that's on top of the steady forces of Ragnow and Jonah, and Decker, and, I mean, Alex being back again. So our veterans were really a solid force for us once again. And it's a good combination right now. And there again, we'll only improve on this roster.
Yeah, and Peach, you've got to love the young guys, and I would extend this to the guys who are going to be going.
Yeah, he gave a lot of credit to the second year.
The second year guys, the Penei Sewells, right? The Derek Barneses, Amon-Ra St. Browns, those guys that are kind of, now they're established, they're coming in. Those guys are the core, and these rookies are trying to, get to that point where they're the core. But we can already see with guys like Aidan, with Malcolm, with Kirby, that they're quickly getting into that core status. Those are going to be guys that you build on, and you love the fact that all these guys got a ton of playing time this year.
Yeah.
And look, it was early in the season. You were playing a lot of guys. I think that's part of the reason, why they were so bad defensively. I think some of these guys had to grow up a little bit. And we saw that, and they did. And when they started to grow up and make more plays and learn the league and just figure out what this NFL thing is all about, that defense started to play better down the stretch. Carolina game was standing, obviously. But the future's bright. Look, you need pieces on defense. Yep. The numbers are still the numbers. You finished 32nd in the league. You need some more pieces there. But I think there's also some pieces there defensively that you're like, okay, I think these guys are going to be players. We just get a couple guys around them, the right pieces here or there, a helping hand, and you can maybe take a bigger leap with how well some of these rookies played this year.
I mean, the rookies you can't ask for any more production as a rookie, especially out of a 6th-round pick like James Houston and Malcolm Rodriguez. And the fact that, the Lions gave them opportunities to grow and develop throughout the year and give them 6th-round pick opportunities to start late in a playoff push, and some of that is due to injury. James Houston only came up because the Acquirers were down and Charles Harris, and it's just circumstance. But
he was trending in practice. They were trying to find a way to get him. I remember talking to Decker, and he was like, I was telling Hank Fraley for like a month, like, why is this guy not on? Because he's beating me every day in practice.
Yeah. And Dan didn't even mention James Houston in that whole little 2-minute the guy with 8 sacks in 7 games. Yeah, sure. That guy didn't even make the cut on that list, but
I'm sure that was on purpose. That was on purpose by Dan.
Gotta hide him a little bit. But he had, Tracy goes down, you slot Kirby in, and he starts the rest of the year, and you're just developing those guys. And it was unfortunate to have the injuries that allowed, Kirby to step in such a major role, and James Houston step in such a major role. But you're seeing the dividends of that on the back end now, because now you have 2 pieces next year. You have Malcolm next year, and then the second year guys. I mean, Lee McNeil played every game and was in there in the middle and was helped by he's only going to get better because you have 2 rookie edges that were outstanding this year. So he can press the pocket from the middle, and you got 2 guys that can finish on the edge. And Amon-Ra, I mean,
we haven't even talked about
Onwuzurike
yet either. I mean, there's a guy, obviously back injury, you hope that's well, but there's another guy, part of that class, that St. Brown and Panay class, that you hope can now get past the back injury and start be what
to catch up and develop.
This was a team that looked to potentially move back in the first round again. That's how much they valued Levi Onwuzurike, and so if he can come back and be that guy, I mean, there's just another guy, to your point, of just coming and being a guy.
Yeah, and the main takeaway from me is how he ended that little clip we just played is we're only going to improve on this roster. Mm-hmm. And this is now with, I know we're going to talk about it with Brad, but there's a little more money to be thrown around, and there's a little more veteran presence that can be added, and there's a lot more draft picks that you can either cash in on or go ship them out for more vets. So there's a lot of improvement to be done, but this core over the last 2 years is a home run so far.
Look at you with the tease.
I'm in the content business.
So because of that beautiful tease, let's shift over to Brad Holmes, who talked on Tuesday. Dan talked Monday, and same thing with Brad. Let's go through kind of a few points here. Now, obviously, there are a few more points with Brad, but we don't want to make this thing an hour and a half. No. I think we could.
If you want to go listen to Brad, I would definitely recommend
definitely do that. But let's highlight a few, and let's start with just the most important position on the field and the GM's confidence that he has in quarterback Jared Goff. Here's what Brad had to say about Jared.
Yeah, I don't really know what the decision is. I was always confident in him because I've been with him from the get-go since he was drafted back when I was with LA. I just kind of know how resilient and mentally tough he is. And, I think a lot of it was me knowing all the success he had in LA. I think that was kind of forgotten about a little bit when he got here, and I think he was put in a very tough situation. I don't want to say I don't know how many quarterbacks in that situation that he was in last year, but we had a lot of injuries, man, and we didn't really have the weapons around him. Dan had to really make a very tough decision on the staff offensively and make a change there. So, and he stayed the course. I've talked to you guys about this at length, but knowing what he's made of, that's why I kept faith, kept confidence, and I respect the hell out of him because I told him, look, we'll hold up our end of the bargain. Like we're being held accountable. We got to put you in the right situation with the right pieces around you, stability on offense, and felt like we did that. And he held up his end of the bargain, and I think it just worked out. But I didn't really have any doubt or waver. Again, like you said, Eric, I never really deemed him as a bridge. I think everybody else did, but I think it's a little bit of the recency bias from what he had to go through last year.
Yeah, Peach, I couldn't agree with Brad more. And I love the part there where it was like, you can do a lot. You can.
It's easier to get worse.
It's easier to get
than it
worse
is to get better
at quarterback position than better. And I thought it couldn't have been said any better. Be careful what you wish for sometimes. As a fan, you want that hot young thing, and you could end up with Zach Wilson. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation at quarterback. Yeah. And look what that's done to the Jets organization and how it's put them behind the 8 ball. You have a terrific defense, and you got worse at quarterback, and now you're out of the playoffs.
And questioning
and
everything
what your future is. So, I thought it was a great point. But look, when I look at Jared, I look at a guy that obviously offensively they started the year terrific, but he was making some mistakes. And look, he's a veteran guy. He could have been like, oh, no, don't worry, I got this. Look, no, he said, okay, I'll take the criticism. What do I do to get better? Ben Johnson said, hey, let's do this, this, and this, and I think we'll be much better. And credit to Jared for saying, I think you're right. Let's work on this. He goes 324 passes without throwing an interception to end the season. He's top 6, I think, in every major statistical category. And I think there's no question that he is the quarterback of the future for this football team.
I mean, I think going in, you couldn't ask for a better Jared Goff season, just the way everything ended up. And the rocky start, the Dallas game, Seattle, Philly,
New England.
throwing these pick sixes that ended up, costing you the game in the score at the end.
In totality, yeah.
But, last 9 games, 15 touchdowns, no interceptions, and just playing safe, and that's something,
But making big plays, too.
Yeah,
it was and that I think was the nice balance. That look, he was very conscious of not making the big mistake, but he also let some balls loose and gave his receivers some opportunities.
And part of that was Chark finally getting healthy, getting back, and you had your downfield threat. And now you're going to have
J-Mo
another
getting back.
offseason with J-Mo, no matter who the offensive coordinator is. That's going to open things up. It just it is, because that's such a weapon for you. And you still. It remains to be seen what wide receivers are in the building next year if Chark is back. But you've obviously, if he does come back, you've got some rapport there now, and that really, I think, helped him. But my takeaway from Brad on that was, we told him that we had to hold up our end of the bargain, and they did that with signing Chark. And now you got to go figure out if you're bringing him back or if you're bringing somebody else in. But you got J-Mo, and you kept this offensive line together, and you really tried to just stack the room, and you got to figure out what you're going to do with running back now that Jamal's leaving. Do you bring in a second guy there? But you have to hold up. You have to give him every compliment of weapon that he needs and reward him for an outstanding season.
When Jared was at his best in LA, when they were winning playoff games and he was taking them to the Super Bowl, what'd they do well? They had Todd Gurley. They were running the football really, really well. They had play action. They could protect Jared with the offensive line.
I mean, he was the best play-action quarterback in the league this year.
And he had weapons on the outside. Yeah. And so they've built that same recipe here. They want to run the football, 2,000-plus rushing yards as a football team. They've got an offensive line and weapons to be dangerous in play action. You mentioned he was the best in play action. They've built exactly what Jared does well has been built here in Detroit, and that's why I think it's just a match. It's a match made in heaven for both.
That's a testament to Brad, who was there for both and knows what it takes and knows what worked and how to rebuild it here.
Well, we need to switch over to the other side of the ball. And we talked about it a little bit. The defense, has struggled a little bit. But Brad was asked specifically, hey, what position groups do you think need the most work? Or you've got, like you mentioned, $27 million roughly right around. That's without any moves that you make to maybe increase that cap a little bit. You've got 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, your third-round pick. I mean, you've got ammo, you've got draft ammo, and you've got cap space. So where will Brad Holmes use that cap space the most?
I mean, it's a good question. It's a fair question. There's a lot of different areas that we can go, especially with, the resource that we'll have available to us. Obviously, our defense was ranked 32nd. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious that, we're going to have to utilize some resources to try and improve that defense. I do believe that there's some young guys on our defense right now that are only going to get better. Everything that Malcolm Rodriguez was able to do, I know that linebacker kind of came in as a question, but I think that thing ended as it's more of a positive and more of a strength of Anzalone having a 100-plus tackle season, Derek Barnes taking a jump, and then Malcolm Rodriguez. And I think, our pass rush is on the come. Obviously Aidan with 9.5 sacks, I think he's only going to get better. James Houston's only going to get better. So, and then guys that we did not have, available to us is Charles Harris. I mean, Charles Harris had to go on IR. So him coming back, Romeo had to kind of come back slowly from a really tough injury. So there's pieces there. They always weren't available to us, but we saw enough growth. But obviously we need to improve in that area, and I think we will.
And I couldn't agree with Brad. Well, I think it's pretty obvious.
Defense.
Tight end, running back, maybe a guard.
I was going to say right guard. I feel like you can find somebody.
But I'm not shooing out Big V out the door right yet.
Not if he wants to be.
If that ballot back is okay, yeah, he's a proven vet guy, great in that room. But yeah, you could make a case for a running back, a guard, and a tight end. I think maybe a backup quarterback, a young guy to develop. I don't think anybody that's going to push Jared. Obviously, we just covered that, but they need help on defense.
Yep.
I mean, you look at it was 30th in total defense. I think they were 30th in points allowed. I think they were 27th against the pass, 28th or 29th against the run. And look, they played better the second half of the year. And we talked about it. You like guys like Aidan and Malcolm and Kirby and Jerry Jacobs. And I think they've got some pieces there, Bugs, Liam. But they need some game breakers. They need some guys that I think can make even more big plays and just be a steady force for that team. And it's going to come from the defensive side of the football, and I agree with Brad.
And I think you're actually, when you're looking at the draft and 6 and 18, where those 2 picks fall, I mean, it's super early, obviously, but there's going to be 4 or 5 first-round corners, which is a big need. You could use another safety, depending on, are you bringing Elliott back? Where's Tracy at in rehab?
Need a linebacker.
Need an interior lineman to kind of push that pocket with Aleem and Bugs and Kaminsky if he's back, Levi, but you need an interior pass rusher, which is Jalen Carter getting the 6? Probably not, but you see what happens.
But you've got 18.
Yeah.
And that's what you were talking about earlier. You have
18.
You have 18
now.
and a second round pick to move up to for a guy that you want, or however you decide you want to do it.
Yeah.
He's got the ammo, but I think everyone agrees, and I think all of you out there can agree that it's going to be heavy defense. I think it's going to be heavy defense in free agency. I think it's going to be heavy defense in the draft, and I think all you and I think both of us will be fine with that.
But that's not to say that there are not areas on the offense. Like if Chark goes, you got to have another wide receiver in here. You got to figure out what you're doing with the second running back along with Swift, whether that's Jamal or outside the organization. And at some level, I think you need to draft a developmental, at the least, interior lineman, just guard spot versality. If Evan Brown doesn't,
I think you're at that
back.
point too where you could use a young quarterback that you could start to develop in your scheme. And look, if Jared's 28, so but you can also flip a young guy that you develop for a year or two for an asset.
Yeah,
he becomes an asset to other teams. So I think that could very much not only be an upgrade at the backup quarterback position, but an asset moving forward. You can never have enough good quality quarterbacks in your system.
No, so solve the defense, but not at the ignoring of the offense.
And something tells me Brad won't.
No.
I mean, it's best player available for Brad. And I think if that happens to be a position on offense and it's clearly here on his board and the other defensive guys are here, he's proven he ain't going to reach. Yeah. He's not going to reach for that position of need. He's going to take the best football player available.
Which is
that's
how you
why
should do
this
it.
thing is flipping in the right direction, because they're taking good football players that fit what they do, and that's how you become a good football team. All right. Well, that's the kind of draft part of it, but the free agent part of it too is money. Yes, he's got a few more assets. We mentioned it before. I think they're, according to overthecap.com, they're right around $27 million right now. You can make some decisions on Big V, some other guys that could free up some cap space, decide not to re-sign guys, go a different route, younger. So that number can fluctuate quite a bit here, but it's more than he's had in his tenure. And this is what Brad had to say about being able to open the wallet a little bit and potentially spend in free agency.
No, I mean, spending big is subjective a little bit, but no, I'm not worried about that. Again, like Dan and I have a plan that we're going to stick to in terms of how we're going to construct our roster, and those guys will all play. So just because we add a veteran or a big spin guy in free agency, it doesn't mean that another guy. One thing that is very prevalent that is high priority is player development in this building, and that will never be a shortcoming around here. So when we talk about stunning a guy's growth, that usually doesn't happen around here. So regardless of what we do in free agency, I think our young guys will still take the upward trajectory.
All right, what do you take from that, Peach?
I think it's going to be, and I know a lot of fans were annoyed with how slow it went last year, and there was no Marcus Williams or any of those big contracts handed out, but I think it's going to be slow and steady wins the race again. That's the vibe that I got.
That's what the vibe I got too. I don't think there's going to be a $100 million free agent. I'd be very surprised if there was.
No, but if you can get a guy that could go for $100 million, but you keep him to 3 years or whatever, I don't think And the way the class is, obviously guys can get cut, and you never know what it looks like until that second week of March.
Yeah.
But the early returns, I feel like there's no one that is going to get this big, massive, long-term contract at this point.
And I thought he made a good point, too, when he said, there are guys, in terms of the free agents, but there are guys to 31 other teams, too.
Yeah.
Like, it's
You're
not
competing to re-sign. John Kaminsky's got a lot of great tape out there. He's going to get phone calls.
Let's not forget 8 teams tried to claim him, and then he just went and produced.
Yeah.
A guy like DJ Chark, I think some teams are going to say, okay, look, all the tough catches, down the field, balls that he made. That could be a nice addition to our offense, you're right. And so you're competing with 31 other teams. And so it's not just, hey, we're re-signing our guy back. We're re-signing a guy back that's also coveted by a lot of teams. And the value of re-signing that guy is we know exactly what that guy's about, how he studies, how he fits our culture, how he fits in the locker room. You don't always know that about guys. There's some guesswork, and as much work as you can do in free agency, until they get in the building, you don't really know how they fit in the meeting room, how they fit with their teammates, what's their culture fit, are they tough, what do they do when things get rough, when you start, you lose 3 games in a row, are they a guy that shuts it off, does he put in the extra work? And so all that about your guys, and so that's why I see if they're talented, you don't just re-sign a guy to re-sign him. Mm-hmm. A guy like Kaminsky, he's talented, he does a lot of good things. A guy like Chark, so I think if they go and spend money re-signing guys, I don't think you look at that like, they were very conservative and they weren't aggressive enough to do it. I just think they want guys that they very much know their plan here, the type of guys that they want to build, the type of guys that they want to have here long term. And if it's guys that have already been in this building and they've identified as fits, signing your own guy isn't being conservative. It's the right thing to do that fits your football team.
No, and they're going to bring outside free agents in, just as they did last year. They signed a lot of guys back from 2 years ago to bring back for this year. But there was, Chris Board, Mike Hughes, those veteran additions that are going to come in, Chark, and just compete. And you saw Mike Hughes got a lot of playing time by the end of the year, and Chris Board was a big coverage linebacker and a special teams ace. But then you got the Kaminskys and Buggs and Josh Woods, and those guys are so clearly culture guys. Anzalone, that this team it was built around this year, and there are worse things to do than running back a 9-win team that went 8-2 to finish the year. I understand that it might not be as fun to bring back all your own guys, but you finish 8-2 to end the year.
And I think bringing back guys and mixing them with outside guys, I think you just go to camp and you say best man wins. Let's compete for it.
And at the least,
I think because you re-sign a guy doesn't mean he's guaranteed that spot either. You sign back Alex Anzalone, you draft a linebacker, you bring a linebacker in. Yeah, best man wins.
There's going to be new blood no matter what. You got 2 1s and 2 2s, and the rest of the draft. Mm-hmm. So even if you're slowly bringing back these guys for 2 to 3 year deals, and you're not making the big splash, and there are big splashes out there. There's Jesse Bates is a need at safety, and Daron Payne, and these guys can get extended before free agency. But there are big names out there if you want to go get them. But if it's going to be slow and steady, I think the crop of Lions free agents is a good group to bring back for that.
All right, well, that puts the bow on 2022, 2023, a little bit of 23 in there, a little bit of January. But that's not going to be it for the 20 in the Huddle podcast. We're going to,
we've got a plan.
We're gonna keep this going throughout the off season. I hope you guys have liked it every week. But I think we'll do some major events. We're gonna go down to the Senior Bowl. Yep. We're gonna do the podcast from Mobile in a few weeks. We're gonna hit up the Super Bowl. Some of our guys might be there. We're gonna be on Radio Row and see if we can't get a lot of guys around the league talking about the Lions. Some of our own players. We'll just see kind of what we can get down there and do that. And throughout the off season, we'll for the draft, obviously, and the owners' meetings, combine. We'll check in with you guys and do a podcast from all those locations. So I hope you've liked the podcast. I've enjoyed doing it. PJ's done a great job producing it, and there will be a lot more in 2023.